All right.
Okay. Good evening, all of you. I hope you're not sleepy. रात के 9 बजे हो गए, पता है. Okay, let's start with the theories of intelligence today. Now, we all know that we have two portions of our brain, the left brain and the right brain. The left brain is definitely our arithmetic or logical portion, whereas our right brain is more creative. If I'm wrong, please let me know. Now, can someone tell me what is intelligence or intellect or called in Hindi or Sanskrit or Devanagari? Can someone please tell me what it is called?
Buddhi. Buddhimata.
Very good. And decision making?
Nirnay making.
No, in Sanskrit it has a different name. Nirnay lena to decision making hi hai. Guys?
What did you ask?
Decision maker. हिंदी में मतलब संस्कृत में टेक्स्ट बुक के दूसरे लाइन पे है.
Nirnayak.
Nishtayatmika buddhi.
Who is that?
I just read from textbook.
Very good. And inner instrument?
Andar ka baja.
Who's that?
Ritika, you're on fire.
Antakarana.
Antakarana, but yes. Nice. Okay, as per the Indian system of thought, intellect was defined as the decision maker, which in turn that means the decision maker had was described as an inner instrument which processes wisdom, prudence, emotions, social value, and relationships. And as per this theoretical definition that we have all throughout our textbooks on what intelligence is, it was found to be a sum of everything that we know. Now, all the things that we know were further categorized into three aspects: the ability to learn and or profit from experience, the ability to solve problems, and the ability to cope with the demands of the environment. Matlab, adjusting to situations. Next, we also found that there were hundreds of definitions given by a lot of people, and you can see a lot of them. Binet, Stern, Terman, Spearman, Determan, so many people, so many men that have given our definitions. But kul milake, if you see the properties of intelligence, they summed up to these 7 properties. And sorry, these 6 properties, that is reasoning, judgment, memory, power of abstraction, ability to consciously adjust the way we think based on the requirements that we have, and the ability to adjust increasingly to the complex environment. Matlab, if you look at the Ice Age or Stone Age, the entire environment was different. You had to stay in a cave and all that. Further on, they learned how to use stones and knives and all that to kill animals and eat them. Uske baad, because they couldn't eat raw animals and they were getting sick, they invented fire. They discovered fire, and so on and so forth. Now we're using telephones, we're using TVs, we're using mobiles. हमारा पूरा life technical हो गया है. And this is the meaning of the ability to adjust to the increasing complexity of the environment. Now, as अभी कोरोना के टाइम पे भी increasing complexity हो रहा है. As per the Wechsler's description of intelligence, he said it was a hypothetical construct, which is an aggregate or a global capacity of the individuals to act purposefully. Matlab, it is the entire ability or the capacity of a person to behave more purposefully or to think more rationally and deal effectively with the environment he is in. And as per the operational definition, intelligence was defined as what intelligence tests measure. And what do intelligence tests, the intelligence tests that have been constructed had an assumption that intelligence is some kind of a general ability. and it exists to some extent in all the people, in everybody. Okay, and this it also determined how a person was able to deal with a problem situation. And apart from this, Francis Galton, जो Darwin का cousin था, Charles Darwin's cousin, was very inspired by Darwin's Origin of Species, and he came up with the mental test, or something called as a mental test. And this was the first psychological test that had been invented, and it was used to measure intellectual abilities. He used the height, the tests that he had done had normally included the height, weight, breath, so breathing power, hearing, sight, color sense, all these in assessing the intellectual abilities. After this, Binet, Alfred Binet, was the person who done some work on human abilities, and thought that after his initial work on it, thought that it was very similar to what Galton said or what Galton did. But as soon as the 20th century came in, he realized that there were certain differences. By the French government, he was asked by the French government to identify the mentally challenged children. And he collaborated with this person called Theodore Simon, who made a list of 30 questions, and it ranged in difficulty, which were administered to 50 children. Matlab, they took 50 children, administered these tests to find out who was mentally challenged. Later on, they revised these tests in order to the age, with reference to the age. Now we come to the most popular, the Spearman's two-factor theory. Now, what does a two-factor theory say? Okay, it talks about the G factor and the S factor. But before that, it is also known as a factor analytical theory. It was proposed by Charles Spearman in 1904. And as per this theory, as you guessed it, there are two factors. That is the G factor, which is also known as the general ability or the general intelligence, and the S factor, which is known as the specific ability and the specific intelligence. The differences or the explanations to this G factor and S factor is what we're going to see now. Now, before we go ahead, if anybody has listened to what the recordings that I've sent, you should be able to guess what the G factor and S factor represent. Can anybody explain in their own words what they say? Guys?
What's your question, Vasudha?
G factor. Can anybody explain the G factor and S factor before I can explain it?
General intelligence.
Vasudha, I think you only explain before we get confused again. I feel you explain it.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I know about G factor. It's all about, so Spearman says that every person has one G factor. That means a generalization through which they are able, okay, better you, tumhi bol do. I forgot how to say it. It's general factor.
General factor and the specific factor. Now, what does the general factor say? It says that the intelligence or the general intelligence is inborn and it is universal as well as genetic in nature. Matlab, it is within the person. It is innate. It is an innate quality. Okay, and it is universal, meaning everybody has some amount of general intelligence. Genetic in nature, we receive it from our parents. And it is also the basic knowledge or mental energy that we require in order to do our day-to-day activities. Now, general intelligence is also the ability that is constant and it cannot be learned. That means bahar se we cannot learn it. It has to come from within us. G factor is different from one person to one person. So my G factor is different from your G factor. Your G factor is different from your brothers or your sisters or your friends or your cousins. Whoever it is different from them. It is unique to every person. Unique to every person. And it is generally inherited or governed by genetics. Now, G factor, a basic explanation of G factor is that it is representative of the native intelligence that is required to do your day-to-day tasks. Specific intelligence, or your S factor, is the intelligence that is acquired by an individual. That means you learn it. Suppose say music, art, dance, um, uh, oration, that is talking fluently in front of people. All these are learned. That is why it is called as the acquired or specific factors. And the example for this is your spatial intelligence, your multiple intelligences, right? All these come under your specific factor or your S factor. They can be learned, as I mentioned before. They differ from one activity to another within the same individual. So someone may have amazing body kinesthetics and not as much as your mathematical. So there's a difference between the abilities within the person itself. S factor again differs from one person to another person. Now, S factor can be defined as as representative of specific intelligence that is required to perform certain specific tasks. Okay. Now, if you see this example that I've given below, I've given below, you see that there are two aspects here: the ability to solve word problems, that is the task being performed, and the communication ability. The common thing among them is your vocabulary ability. That is your G factor. Now, to solve a problem, you need mathematical abilities, which is your specific or your special ability. And your ability in communication is the ability to express. That becomes your S factor. Now, this is an example of your G and S factor. Again, in the textbook, there's a circle drawn with different lengths of oval shapes around it. What it suggests is that every specific ability draws from your general ability. Now, this general ability is common among many specific abilities. There are some specific abilities which overlap with each other. Now, there was some opposition that was given to the two-factor theory, mainly that it was a factor analytical theory approach and it was purely psychometric in nature, and it did not provide a cognitive theory. Now, we came across the word factor analysis twice in this entire Spearman's two-factor theory. What does it state? The factor analysis states that it is a statistical procedure for describing interrelationships among the number of observed variables. Factor analysis is used to measure variables that cannot be measured directly and to summarize large amounts of data and to develop and test theories. This is what is your factor analysis. And whatever criticism that Spearman got, he opposed it by saying that all of this was misplaced. Next, we move on to Thorndike's theory.
Can you just go back to that example, Vasudha, which you have drawn? Can you just, can you just explain this quickly again?
Okay, see, now someone is very good at solving word problems. What are word problems? For example, if you look into your textbooks, maths textbooks from school, you'll have these problems that say X is carrying 10 numbers of apples. He finds two people across the street and he wants to distribute them. He gives equal quantities to both these people, but has one with him. How many apples did he give? Something like that. Now that is your word problem. What you need, the ability to understand, is your vocabulary ability. Because without the vocabulary ability, you cannot understand the mathematical problem that has been given to you. And the mathematical problem is actually putting it into an equation and trying to find out as to how many he has given away and how many he has with him. That is your the ability to solve a word problem. And communication ability. Communication ability is the ability to talk to someone properly. That is, he again needs to be good at two things: vocabulary ability and the ability to express. If someone suppose has only vocabulary ability, he knows how to form a sentence and all that, but he does not know how to put it into proper words or express himself. So he doesn't know exactly where to emphasize, where to not emphasize, where to stress properly, or what he has to explain. He is unable to understand that. So if you see, the ability to express is specific to communication ability. The mathematical ability is specific to the ability of solving a word problem. But the common factor among both of it is vocabulary ability, the ability to understand syntax. That is your vocabulary ability, which is the G factor, which is common among all of them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Next, we move on to the Thorndike's theory. Now, Thorndike's theory is also known as the Thorndike's multiple factor theory of intelligence, which was proposed in the year 1926. He stated that there are specific stimuli and specific responses that are associated with the stimuli. He believed that intelligence is constituted of a multitude of separate factors. Now, this is similar to your S factor. The theory is also known as atomistic theory of intelligence. Now, there are two names that have been given to Thorndike's theory. That is the Thorndike's multiple factor theory of intelligence and the atomistic theory of intelligence. And as per Thorndike, intelligence is a name, a convenient name that was given to some of the infinite number of connections between a stimulus and its response. Now, it cannot be given to a fake connection between these two. They have to be given to potential, that is actual proper connections that are there between the stimuli and the response. That is why it is a convenient name given to the connection between stimulus and the response. Now, Thorndike states that the intelligence is said to constitute of a magnitude of separate factors or elements, each of which being a minute ability or an element. It says that your intelligence is constituted or is a combination of multiple factors or elements. And he says that each of these elements can be a constitution of many other elements or abilities as well. And now he attributes there are four attributes to intelligence as per Thorndike. That is level, range, area, and speed. Level refers to the difficulty of the task that can be solved. That means if a task is given to you, it is the difficulty of the task. It can be either easy or very, very difficult. If suppose say you're playing a game on your phone, that and it has levels of difficulty, right? That is what the level means. Range is a number of tasks that a person can do with a specific degree of difficulty. Okay, here the degree of difficulty is set. If suppose say you're playing Sudoku on your phone, the degree of difficulty is set to medium. Range refers to the number of Sudoku puzzles you can solve in that particular difficulty range. Okay, area refers to the total number of situations at each level to which an individual can respond. It depends. See, in this refers to the situation at which a person can respond to a problem or a task. Now, if he is very stressed out, he cannot actually respond to a task very easily. Okay, if I'm busy, I cannot respond to a task very easily. So it depends on the situation and the number of tasks that he is performing. And speed refers to the frequency or the rapidity at which a person can actually respond to the item. So suppose say I'm receiving about 10 problems at the same time. It is how fast I can actually respond to them and complete these tasks. Has everybody understood so far? सब सो रहा है क्या?
We understand you, Vasudha. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Thorndike had also classified intellectual abilities into three categories. Social abilities, that is the ability to understand people more effectively in order to relate to them. So in order to make a bond with another person, you need to understand the other person. Okay. Now moving on to the next one, it is concrete intelligence. Intelligence. It is the ability to understand or manipulate objects. Now, if you, it is the type. Okay, I'll give you an example to this concrete intelligence. All dogs are helpful, or all dogs are cute. Poodles are the cutest of all dogs. इसका मतलब है कि every dog, no matter what its breed is very cute. No, and poodles out of all these are the cutest. Now, this is a concrete intelligence. Abstract intelligence is the intellectual ability to think in terms of abstract concepts. Now, abstract ka matlab, abstract means it is something that exists only in thought or in form of an idea, in the form of an idea, but does not have a physical form or a concrete existence. Iska example I can give you is an abstract painting. If you look at the blue color painting that is there, this is a representation of an ocean or a beach according to the painter. Okay, it is his form of a beach, but it doesn't look like that to us. Until unless we think as abstractly as he does, it cannot be the same thing. Okay. Next, we move on to Thomson's theory of intelligence. He proposed this in the year 1939. He claimed that the two-factor theory was not the only way that you could explain intelligence. He also said that these facts could be explained on the hypothesis that there are multiple factors in an intellectual ability, and each of these factors are common among other intellectual abilities. Now he takes in the G factor theory here, says that every specific ability has some common ability, and this common ability is common to other specific abilities, and therefore he says that these factors, that is the facts that he's talking about, or the multiple factors that he's talking about, are more free in range compared to the specific factors, but not as free as the general factors. So he's talking about the commonality between the specific and the general, and he's talking about how free they are. Okay, this theory is also known as a sampling theory. That means it takes a portion of whatever population you're talking about. And according to the theory, every test sample has a certain range of elementary human abilities. That means everybody has some sort of a elementary human ability, which at sometimes are wide in range and the other are narrow in range. Now, if you look at people around you, you can notice that some people have more general abilities than the other person. Now, this is what he's talking about. And now he can't test the entire of the population on this theory, right? So he's taken a sample and from that he's tested. And from that test, he's derived this conclusion saying that the common abilities or the elementary human abilities are more for some people and less for some people. He believed that he believed in the G factor, but wouldn't consider it as a basic entity. That means he did not believe that the G factor was the only basic entity, but he believed that the intelligence is a constant combination of ability elements. That means many abilities together consist the G factor or the general factor. Now, Thurston's theory. Thurston's theory was proposed by L.L. Thurston in the year 1935. He used advanced statistical analysis and came up with conclusions that are different from Spearman's nature of intelligence, that is Spearman's two-factor theory. He generalized the Spearman's method of formulas and translated them into a matrix algebra. He carried out a large-scale study of one group of students where he used about 57 tests to come up with his conclusions. Thurston argued that the G factor was a statistical artifact, matlab it is very old, and which resulted from the mathematical procedures that were used to study it. Matlab, the mathematical procedures that we used to study the Spearman's two-factor theory were very old, about I'll say 31 years old, due to which he came up with new methods to find out what the connection, and he used the new approach of factor analysis and found that intellectual behavior does not arise from general factor, but it has 7 independent factors called the primary abilities. Now, what are these 7 primary abilities? They're the word fluency, the verbal comprehension, spatial visualization, number facility, associative memory, reasoning, and perceptual speed. Word fluency is the fluency of how you speak, like the word, the formation of the word. Verbal comprehension is the understanding of the language. Spatial visualization is the ability to estimate the space around you. It is to understand the space around you. Number facility is your mathematical intelligence. Associative memory is your memory, the remembering power. Reasoning is your ability to question and analyze. Perceptual speed is your speed of understanding. These are the 7 independent factors that he found that were the reason for intelligence. He analyzed the mental test data from the samples comprising of the people with similar IQ scores. That means he made all the similar IQ people sit together, and he found that everybody has a different level of these primary mental abilities. That means these 7 abilities that existed in a person were in different quantities in each person. And this actually further supported his model and suggested that his work had more clinical applicability than the Spearman's theory. Now we come to our most interesting topic, the past theory. It is the last and the final topic of this particular chapter. It was proposed in the year that I was born, 1994, which is about 90 years from the Spearman's theory. Now, this was done by Das, Naglieri, and Kirby, who developed the theoretical multi-dimensional view of intelligence with the constructs that they had taken from researches of neuropsychology, information processing, and human cognition. They said that there are 4 components to the sparse theory, that is PASS. I would ask one of you to please tell me the full form of PASS or abbreviations of PASS. Anyone?
Planning
Go ahead.
Attention.
and sequential and successive SS,
Okay.
and no, simultaneous.
One is, yeah, stimulus.
No, okay. Very good. It was a very excellent attempt. It is planning, attention, and arousal, simultaneous processing, and successive processing. Now, planning, as we all know, it is to take the information that we have and put it in organized manners in which we can take a further step. So, planning is the process of thinking about the activities required to achieve a desired goal. It is the first and foremost activity to achieve a desired result. It helps in deciding, planning helps in deciding how a problem or a task is completed. Matlab, it takes care of the how, why, where, what, when, and who of the completion of the task that we have at hand. Now, to remember what planning does, you can put your hand on your forehead, and this is where your planning happens. That is your frontal lobe of your brain. Next comes to attention and arousal. What is attention? Attention is noticing something and observing something with great focus in order to obtain the information. Okay, so it is noticing, sorry, or the notice that is taken of someone or something, and regarding of someone or something as an interest or important. You're putting your entire focus on one point. That is your attention. Arousal is a state of excitement or energy expenditure that is linked to emotion. Usually, arousal is closely related to a person's appraisal of significance of an event or to the physical intensity of a stimulus. Now, what does arousal mean? It is the release of energy that you get at a particular situation or based on a particular emotion. If you're angry, that is also arousal. If you're happy, that is also arousal. But it is the release of the energy that you get at that point of time. Now, it is said that different stimuli that have been received from the environment are to be prioritized, and that is what is done in this arousal and attention stage. A person who is generally not able to prioritize this stimuli generally suffers from something called as the ADD, that is the attention deficit disorder. Now, in order to know where this takes place, please put your hand at the back of your neck, right below your skull. That is where your brainstem is at. And this entire procedure of attention and arousal takes place in your brainstem. Now, when you're cooking or you're driving and all that, you see that many actions happen at the same time. Now, suppose, for example, you're cooking. You can smell stuff, you can hear stuff, you can see stuff, touch, taste. Almost all your five senses are involved in this process, and they all happen at the same time. Now, in processing this information that takes place at the same time from all your senses is known as simultaneous processing. It is the mental process we use to integrate the separate bits of information or stimuli into one whole item. Okay, this process generally happens in your occipital and parietal part of your brain, that is right behind your frontal lobe. If you can place your hand on top of your head, that is your occipital, and at the Dr. Anju, if you're there, you can explain better about the placement of parietal and occipital. Sorry. Okay. And next we move on to the last process of past theory, that is the successive processing. It is the ability to arrange objects in a particular order. Suppose, say you have a group of numbers and you'll have to arrange it in a particular order. That is your successive processing. Now, if you remember Spearman's coefficient relationship, the sums that we did with Spearman and Pearson's coefficient relationship, you realize that we put it into ranks, right? Now that arrangement of numbers is your successive processing part. You can put those numbers in a particular order in order to find their rank. It is also applied to placing objects in a specific order, suppose say with increasing size, decreasing size. All these are taken care by successive processing. Now this particular task is done by your frontal and your temporal part of your brain. Frontal, again, your forehead region. Temporal is right above your ear. Okay. Now, a person who fails at simultaneous and successive processing is generally unable to perform day-to-day tasks, such as tying shoelaces and all that. They generally suffer from problems such as dyslexia, dysgraphia, and all that. Now, Alexander R. Luria was the person who had actually done the basic research when it comes to the past theory. Depending on his theory, the past theory was built. It is not a big difference from what you see in your past theory. Your past theory has put it into PASS. But what Luria did is he went through the information system. That is the minute what you do immediately after you receive your information, what you do after you receive your information, and how you store it. That is your, it is divided. The past theory has been divided previously into 3 functional units. The first functional unit, where the maintaining appropriate cortical arousal attention was required. Now, cortical arousal activates the reticulated formation. That means the interconnection of nuclei. They are the interconnected nuclei in the brain. or the brain cells that are located all throughout your brain. I'm sorry for confusing you. Cortical arousal activity activates your reticulated formation. What it is a interconnected brain cells that are located all over your brain. This allows for us to be very vigilant or active or discriminate between the different stimuli that we receive. That means this is talking about your sensory receptors. If you go back to your Vog and Norman theory and the Atkinson theory, they talk about receiving of stimuli from the environment. Here, they're talking about being vigilant enough or being active or aware enough to receive it. Now, your second functional unit is responsible for taking in the information, elaborating it, understanding it, and storing it. Now, this is done by your successive and simultaneous processing. After which your third functional process comes, which is responsible for planning, programming, and along with this, regulating and controlling your brain activity or your mental activity. This is basically a reformation of your past theory. He's just put it in terms of receiving, understanding, and trying to find out how to use the information that you've received. The past theory, there are certain criticisms that were done. Now, criticism doesn't exactly always have to be bad. According to what I've read about the criticism of the past theory, it was all good. Now, past theory operates on knowledge-based past theory operates on a knowledge-based development, either formally by reading. That means whatever knowledge that you've received is of two types, either formally by reading, schooling, experimenting and all that, and the other is from information that you receive from the environment. That is the informal type of learning. For example, as again a caveman who learned how to wrap himself in animal skin and all that to protect himself is also part of learning from your environment. Now, past theory provided a very unique approach to assess the intelligence, which was based on which the certain tests were based. Now, they also said that the past theory was a unique approach to assess the intelligence, which based its test on Lurier's neuropsychological theory. Now, Das, Naglieri, and Kirby had developed a series of tests called the CAS, the Cognitive Assessment Tests. These were verbal, non-verbal tests that measured basic cognitive functions of individuals between the ages of 5 to 18. Now, this is the end of your chapter. I am open for questions. Guys, you sleeping or awake?
Can you please explain the past theory once again, please, if you don't mind?
No, not a problem. I realized that I wasn't very clear. Okay. Past theory was proposed in the year 1994. Now, Naglieri, Das, and Kirby came up with this very theoretical, multi-dimensional view of intelligence. That means it had a very multi-pointed view. Okay, you can look at it from different angles, which were based on neuropsychology, information processing, and human cognition. These were the areas from which the past theory was developed from. Now, neuropsychology, the study was done by Alexander R. Luria. We'll come to him in a bit. Now, past theory says that there are 4 components to it. That is planning, attention and arousal, simultaneous processing, and successive processing. Now, what does planning do? Whatever information you have, it checks as per the situation as to how you would use it. That is your planning as to how, why, where, when, all these are taken care by this planning process. Now you get a task. Suppose you're supposed to cook something. I'm going back to the cooking. Okay. Now, how will you cook? When will you cook? Where will you cook? Why are you cooking? Who are you cooking for? And most important, what are you going to cook? Now, what are you going to cook will depend on the people who are there around you. That is your who, that is answering your question. Who are you cooking for and who is cooking? Okay, suppose say that I am coming to your house for dinner. I love Chinese and I love Italian food. So according to my tastes, you're going to cook for me and whoever is coming with me. When are you going to cook? Depends on the invitation that you've given me. Where are you going to cook? In your kitchen. How are you going to cook? On either by baking or is it by stir frying or whatever it is that you're going to do. Why are you cooking? Because you invited me over for lunch or dinner. Sunita, you're getting this?
Yes, I'm getting it.
Yeah. Okay. And moving on to where this particular this entire decision making process or planning process is happening, it is in your frontal lobe. Next comes your attention and arousal. Now, whenever you're hearing a joke or whenever you're angry with someone, there's a huge burst of energy that you're experiencing. That is arousal. It is the state of excitement which is linked with your emotion. After which you're also paying attention to something. Now you're listening to me. That means you have a pointed focus on what I'm saying. My voice is where your focus is lying. That is your attention. Now it is this attention and arousal helps in differentiating or prioritizing amongst all the information that you're getting. Suppose say I'm talking to you. I'm I'm teaching you all this. I'm telling you all this. I'm explaining all this. At the side, your son or your daughter comes in and says, Mama, Mama, I'm hungry. Now it is up to you as to what you're going to prioritize, listening to the class that is happening, or your son who is hungry, or your daughter who is hungry, or your dogs are barking because they need to go to the washroom, or some other sounds that you're getting from the TV or whatever it is. Now you're trying to prioritize as to what you have to do. That is your attention. That is what your attention and arousal does. A person who is not able to prioritize between all these different stimuli generally tends to suffer from a problem called ADD, that is attention deficit disorder. Now this particular process takes place in your brain stem. That is, if you put your hand on the back of your neck, that is where this process takes place. Next, we move on to simultaneous processing. Simultaneous processing is the process where you receive multiple stimuli from the entire environment and your brain organizes it and makes a meaningful idea out of the entire thing. Now, if you're cooking, again, I'm taking this example because it can work for any kind of situation. When you're cooking, you're receiving some smell. You're able to hear a lot of sizzling going on or burning going on. You can hear a lot of things. You can see a lot of things as in how cooked your items are. You're going to touch, you're going to feel, you're going to taste, you're going to smell. All these are different stimuli that come from your kitchen when you're working in it. All of it combined together will tell you whether a certain item is ready, not ready, cooked, not cooked, if it is burnt, if it is good or not. All this is a part of your simultaneous processing. Okay. And this usually happens in your occipital or parietal part of your brain. Successive processing. Successive processing is, as it says, one after the other. Successive is what? One after the other. It also explains how you can arrange your information. Now, suppose, say, do you remember the Spearman and Pearson's coefficient correlation factor problem that you've done in your stats class?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Now, what do you do in it? You have to arrange the information that is given in an ascending or a descending order in order to rank it, correct? Guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Now that process is your successive processing. Okay. So you can arrange it in a certain order. It is the ability to assess and arrange objects in an appropriate order. Okay. This takes place in your frontal and temporal part of your brain. Frontal, why? Planning is required to a certain extent in successive processing. That is why your frontal lobe comes into play. Now, if someone is not good at these two S's, that is successive and simultaneous processing, they generally fail to accomplish day-to-day tasks like brushing their teeth, tying their shoelace, buttoning their shirt. All these are day-to-day tasks which are second nature to us by now. We can do it even in our sleep. But for someone who does not, who has failed at successive and simultaneous processing, all these activities become very difficult. Okay, it also leads to dyslexia, dysgraphia, and problems like that. Now, all this past theory is derived from this person called Alexander R. Luria. He was the first person to come up with attention and arousal, simultaneous and successive processing, planning, and all that. He arranged it in a different way. He put it into three primary functional units. The first thing, okay, now if you look at his particular concept or explanation of the past theory, you'll think of it in your day-to-day point of view, as in any new information that you're receiving from your environment. Okay, like for the first time you're touching a dog and it is very soft, you're liking the feeling. It is because you are aware of the sensation of touch or what you're touching. Okay, now that is because of your cortical arousal. It is important for your brain to maintain this arousal, because it will keep a track of how active or aware you are to your surroundings. That is your first function, that is receiving stimuli and arranging it or taking it in. Okay, that is where your cortical arousal comes into picture. Cortical arousal activates reticulated formation. What is reticulated formation? A set of interconnected nuclei or brain cells that are there all over your brain stem. Okay, this allows for adequate vigilance, that is awareness of a particular situation or discrimination between stimuli. You're aware of what stimuli you're receiving and how you're receiving it. The second thing, the second functional unit, after you receive a certain stimuli, you're going to take it into your brain and elaborate on it and store this information using successive and simultaneous processing. Now, if you look at the steps that are there, you're also reminded of the Atkinson and Shiffrin's stage model theory, or your Vog and Norman's theory, because they talk about stimuli that has been received and elaborated and all that. After which, the second functional unit is where you're receiving your information, elaborating it, storing it, and using your simultaneous and your successive processing. And the third and the last step is your planning and programming. Now, suppose, say, a little time later on, there comes a situation where you have to use the information that you've received. It is not going to stay in your mind forever. Like, as in, you're not going to just keep it hidden in your mind forever. You're going to use that information. So this is where your planning and programming comes in. And this also helps regulate your mental activity. All this is done in order to react to that particular situation using the information that you already have. Am I clear?
Yeah, very nice. Very nicely told. Thank you.
Okay. And do you require the criticism of past theory again?
No, that looks okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions that I can answer? Guys, sleeping?
Unit is over?
Yes, unit is over.
Okay.
Someone had a question for me?
Yeah, I think we can stop the recording, then we can
Yes,
ask
please.
questions.